In ancient China, a distinctive and unconventional rule was in place regarding the arrest of individuals based on their height. Emperor Qin Shi Huang, a prominent figure in Chinese history, was responsible for implementing this peculiar regulation. According to this rule, individuals who fell below a specific height threshold were granted exemption from arrest. The criteria for arrest exemption were directly tied to the height of Emperor Qin Shi Huang, who himself stood at 4 feet 11 inches. Essentially, if an individual was shorter than the emperor, they were considered ineligible for arrest under this unique policy. This unusual measure aimed to create a height-based distinction between adults and children in the eyes of the law, allowing shorter individuals to be treated as children and thus exempt from certain legal consequences associated with adulthood. The implementation of such a rule reflects the emperor's influence on shaping societal norms and legal practices during his reign. It also showcases the creative and sometimes arbitrary methods employed by rulers to address issues related to law enforcement and social order in ancient China. This height-based exemption from arrest adds an intriguing layer to the historical context of Qin Shi Huang's rule and provides insight into the dynamics of governance and justice during that era. According to the 18 Laws of Qin, a set of regulations implemented during the ancient Chinese era, there existed a specific criterion for considering individuals as adults. This criterion dictated that individuals had to meet a certain height requirement. Specifically, they had to be as tall as the emperor, Qin Shi Huang. The height of Emperor Qin Shi Huang, who stood at 4 feet 11 inches, served as the benchmark for adulthood in the eyes of the law. The consequence of this particular law was that individuals shorter than the emperor were permitted to plead and be treated as children instead of adults. In other words, if someone did not meet the height standard set by the emperor, they could leverage this legal loophole to assert a status equivalent to that of a child. This unique provision highlights the emphasis placed on physical stature as a determinant of maturity and legal responsibilities during that historical period. The implementation of such a law not only reflected the influence of the emperor's personal characteristics on the legal framework, but also demonstrated the societal importance attached to physical attributes in defining one's legal status. This distinctive aspect of the 18 Laws of Qin sheds light on the complexities of ancient Chinese legal systems and the innovative, if somewhat unconventional, methods employed to categorize individuals within the social and legal hierarchy. During the historical period in ancient China, the availability and accuracy of birth records were notably deficient. The inadequacy of comprehensive birth records meant that verifying an individual's age became an exceptionally challenging task for authorities and society at large. Faced with this significant obstacle in determining the chronological age of its citizens, Emperor Qin Shi Huang, seeking a practical solution, turned to an unconventional but pragmatic method: height. Given the limitations of available documentation, height became a viable alternative for age verification. The emperor recognized that while birth records were incomplete and unreliable, a person's physical stature, specifically their height, could serve as a visible and measurable indicator of their age. As a result, Emperor Qin Shi Huang implemented a system where individuals were evaluated against his own height as a standard, using it as a determining factor for considering them as adults. This decision to use height as a surrogate for age verification showcased the emperor's adaptability and resourcefulness in addressing the challenges posed by the historical context. It also reflects the ingenuity applied by rulers in navigating practical issues related to governance and societal order, when traditional methods were unavailable or insufficient. In essence, the reliance on height as a determining factor for age in the absence of comprehensive birth records illuminates the complexities and innovative approaches taken by ancient Chinese rulers to establish a semblance of order and categorization within their society. Successfully passing the height test, which was a prerequisite for being considered an adult in ancient China during the reign of Emperor Qin Shi Huang, carried with it an additional condition. This condition was a unique caveat that individuals needed to be mindful of: the prohibition of displaying emotions, specifically crying. This restriction was explicitly outlined in the same set of laws that dictated the height requirement for adulthood. In the context of these laws, crying was deemed unacceptable and was considered a sign of weakness. Individuals who had met the height standard and were thus recognized as adults were expected to adhere to a certain emotional restraint. The prohibition against crying was not merely a cultural norm, but a legal mandate, and those who were caught shedding tears faced a distinctive form of punishment. The consequences for displaying this perceived emotional vulnerability were severe. Individuals who violated the prohibition on crying, as dictated by the laws associated with the height test, would undergo a unique and visible form of punishment. This penalty involved the shaving off of their beard and eyebrows, serving as a public and lasting reminder of the consequences for deviating from the prescribed emotional conduct. This interconnected set of regulations sheds light on the broader cultural and societal expectations of emotional expression during that historical period. The coupling of the height test and the prohibition of crying highlights the significance placed on maintaining a certain level of emotional composure and resilience, as dictated by the legal and cultural norms of Emperor Qin Shi Huang's era in ancient China. In ancient China, during the reign of Emperor Qin Shi Huang, a distinct and stringent societal norm was enforced concerning the expression of emotions, particularly tears. Men who were caught shedding tears faced a highly unconventional and symbolic form of punishment: the shaving off of their beard and eyebrows. The act of shaving off one's beard and eyebrows served as a public and lasting consequence for the perceived transgression of displaying vulnerability through crying. This punishment went beyond the physical act of removing facial hair. It carried significant cultural and societal implications. In the context of ancient China, a man's beard was often symbolic of his masculinity, strength, and maturity. The removal of eyebrows also added a symbolic element, as eyebrows contribute to facial expression and convey emotions. By imposing such a distinctive penalty, the authorities sought to reinforce the cultural norms surrounding emotional resilience and stoicism. The public nature of the punishment ensured that it would not only affect the individual, but also serve as a visible deterrent for others who might contemplate expressing their emotions in a similar manner. This practice reflects the societal expectations of emotional control and the strict enforcement of gender roles and expressions during that historical period. The shaving of the beard and eyebrows was not just a physical consequence, but a symbolic act designed to uphold certain ideals of masculinity and emotional restraint as dictated by the cultural and legal norms of Emperor Qin Shi Huang's era in ancient Qin. During the Qin dynasty in ancient China, a distinctive and somewhat peculiar cultural practice was established concerning women and their emotional expression. Before entering into marriage, every woman was required to engage in a daily crying ritual lasting 1 hour for a consecutive period of 30 days. However, what makes this ritual particularly unique is that the woman did not partake in this emotional exercise alone. The crying ritual was a communal activity that involved various female family members. The woman's mother would join her for 3 weeks, followed by the grandmother for 2 weeks, and finally, aunts and sisters for 1 week each. This created a shared experience within the family, making it a collective and bonding ritual. The requirement for women to cry daily before marriage was not merely a personal expression of emotion, but also a cultural expectation and tradition. The involvement of multiple generations of female family members emphasized the significance of the ritual within the familial context. It served as a preparation for the woman's transition into married life, symbolizing an emotional release and a necessary step before embarking on the next chapter of her life. The cultural and familial dimensions of this crying ritual underscored the interconnectedness of emotions, family bonds, and the cultural expectations surrounding marriage during the Qin dynasty. It provides a glimpse into the unique customs and practices that shaped the lives of women in ancient China, showcasing how emotions were not only personal, but also shared and celebrated within the context of family and cultural traditions. The crying ritual practiced by women before marriage in ancient China, as mandated by the Qin dynasty, held a significant cultural and familial meaning. It was viewed as a crucial and indispensable demonstration of affection towards the family. In the cultural context of that time, the act of crying was not perceived solely as an individual expression of emotion, but was intricately tied to familial bonds and traditions. By participating in the crying ritual, women showcased their emotional connection and devotion to their family members, emphasizing a deep and meaningful display of affection. The communal nature of the ritual, involving the woman's mother, grandmother, aunts, and sisters, underscored the idea that the emotional experience was shared and cherished within the family unit. The act of crying became a symbol of both personal and collective love and care for one's family, reinforcing the interconnectedness and importance of familial relationships in the cultural fabric of ancient China. The notion of the crying ritual as a necessary display of affection implies that emotional expressions were not only accepted, but actively encouraged as a means of reinforcing family ties. It reflects the cultural values that place significance on emotional openness and the communal experience of shared emotions within the familial context.